Welcome back, everybody. Today's discussion will be about pottery and the history. And today's guest is Damien. Love his information. This dude always has great presentations. Actually, you inspired me to do, if you noticed, PowerPoint slides to actually what I do. So that way I can get a visual. So I really appreciate that. And we got co-host right here, Fat Jesus Live.
Yo, what's up, everybody? Man, I was busy growing my greens out back and everything like that. And all of a sudden, we're going to be talking about pottery. I'm like, oh, bro, I got tons of pottery back here. I said, no, we're not talking about that type of pottery. I said, oh, not that type of, not the, I thought you said the other thing. No, but now I know what he's talking about. So I had to be prepared. It's so early in the morning. Good morning, everybody.
So, like I said, Damien always has a PowerPoint slide. So I didn't know which one you wanted me to start off with.
I wanted you to start with that because I wanted to address, before we get to the Middle East, which is what inspired me to, in a sense, put this blog together. I already had done stuff on pottery, but once I saw your video where you talked about the Ubaidian pottery, I realized I really hadn't addressed pottery like as a corpus before. And I realized that I really probably needed to do that because I know stuff that, in a sense, and could put it in a contextualized understanding that I feel like a lot of people aren't really doing. So for me, like I've said before to you, if we look at the fact that, and I put it down here right at the bottom, it's hard to see where it says pre-fired figurines. Now, the Hazai tribe make what I call mud babies, but it's actually like a female figure that is like a pseudo ancestor because it's not actually the baby of it's usually by the way, so explain it. It's usually done because a woman is pregnant. They make this figurine that is not pregnant. It's not really the baby, so I really shouldn't call it a mud baby. But they do make it out of mud or clay from the water, like to the shore of a river or a water source. And they make it a female figure, and it's not really an actual member of an ancestor. And it's also not like I said, not the baby. It's not a representation of the mother, but it is sort of, they feel, an alive being that is sort of in a pseudo way connected to the clan. This is important for me because right from that area is where all of out of Africa people relate. So any idea out of Africa, it's not unthinkable that the source of why figurines show up 30,000, in Czechoslovakia near Austria border has the first clay figurines and they're female. So just the thought that, because some people have said before that it's about sexuality, which they're not sexualized. So I don't buy that. And the fact that they're female, I think probably more relates like the understanding ethnographically of what the Hazai say. They say it is like a pseudo ancestor. So it does relate to like they believe a being, like once it's made, it is a entity or spirit or whatever, but it's not a direct related spirit, but it is sort of related. So it's not like they make a spirit and now it's a god or something. It is related sort of to the clan. So this is important because I think, to me, totemism and clan starts in Europe, probably as a lingering influence of the out of Africa. Then meeting one of the reasons why I think this is because there's a big drop in incest, which usually means someone's controlling sex. That's generally something a woman would inspire more than a man would, of how we can't have sex or who we can't have sex with. But also there's like 4 different entries or like colonizations, like 1,000 or so years in between of the Orcanation culture, which is what is the first, people call them like the Cro-Magnons or culture. And then also that's when they meet a second time, the Neanderthals. And I think that it's possible that all this similar language, similar region, but different times, and then meeting different people would tend to inspire this clan mentality, like this is us and that's them. Anyways, just to give like why I think
That's true.
the figurines, but I don't think it was out of nothing. Like I said, Hazai people have where this pseudo being that's created out of mud or clay is related to us. And it's not related to everybody in Africa, every tribe, and you know what I'm saying? It's not all humanity. So it's just pertaining to them. So I think it's possible that when they left Africa, they already had a pre-existing idea. Now they've also in Africa 60,000 before the mass amount of people left, or at the time they were leaving. They found shells, ostrich shells with engravings that look like they're sort of family or maybe clan related. So I have also a feeling that it's not like, even though I feel that in Europe, Western Europe especially, that it emerged as totemism, it's possible that the seeds of that were already occurring in Africa. And so they just became more prominent when these people left and became isolated. Just my thing. So just I want to address that because I feel like people forget, like we came from Africa and there's like reasons already in Africa why things could be later happening. So also because I feel sometimes the way that the people can say it's like nothing happened in Africa and then everything happened outside. Yeah, outside of the people that just left Africa.
Right. You brought up Ubadians, and I have to say it because I don't want to forget it. It's very interesting you brought that up. We did have a conversation about.
I don't think our the people listening know who the Ubadians are, so you probably want to give them a little bit of an intro.
Yeah, they're basically the individuals who came before the Sumerians inhabited the land of Sumer. It's funny because I say it all the time. The Sumerians are considered the first civilization because of their writing system, right?
Right.
There's a lot of people that have different criteria for a civilization. Some people say writing system, some people say government, and all kinds of other things to add with it. Pottery is sometimes mostly included in that idea also. But the reason why I thought as far as Göbekli Tepe was part of the, being in the beginning stages is because of the idea of how far back it goes. And because they say we haven't dug up the whole entire place of Göbekli Tepe, the idea is that there's still more underneath and that it goes back further than what we know of as today. After that discussion,
how many thousand years ago is this?
They say
it's about 11,000
yeah.
to 10,000.
Damn!
I usually, me personally,
go back there. Hold on.
Usually I say somewhere around 12,000 BC, only
That's
just to be on the happy side.
Well, yeah, because it also could be considered 11,500. So that's
So I just say happy 12,000. It's just an easy number to remember. And I always say that, the easiest thing to do is always find numbers that is closer to something that you can say agree. Nobody knows exactly the right dates. It could have been 11,201. We don't know, right?
Right, but just like where I say in Mali that it's 12,000, some people think it could possibly go as far back as 14,000.
And that's why I'm glad you said that, because that was after that discussion. I was going back and rereading the book, the Doggone Tribe, and what I learned was that according to the Doggone Tribe, their invention or introduction to pottery, as far as being heat being used to heat it up and making it hard, was because a woman, her husband was a blacksmith, so he was using iron and manipulating metals and stuff like that, and of course he had fire all the way around him because of course you got to have fire, right? Well, she would, like you was called it, the what was it, mud babies or something like that?
Yeah,
because of the idea.
Hazai tribe.
Yeah. So she would get the mud or the clay or whatever the case may be, mold her little pottery the way she wanted it, and just like how human instinct kicks in, hey, I need this to hurry up and dry, so I need to set this by some fire. So pottery was developed because the man the blacksmith who was manipulating metal had the fire, and the woman sat there and said, "Hey, I can use this heat to, harden up this pottery." And that's how pottery came to be to the Dogon tribe, which I think is very interesting because of the simple fact that you can see how that they have already had pottery before. A lot of people think I said this yesterday and say this so many times. A lot of people believe that the wheel was invented because of the use of transportation, transporting one thing to another very easy, or humans, or whatever the case may be. But the wheel was actually invented because of the simple fact of pottery. It was the pottery's wheel that got that started. So the reason
that's possible.
Yeah,
I'm not saying it's not, but it also, the first wheel could have been a religious symbol.
Yeah,
related to the sun. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that also, yes, the potter's wheel probably helped inspire the evolution of the wheel. I don't know if it's the origin of the wheel.
Yeah,
I feel the origin probably personally relates to the sun because we have wheel symbols. I gave you real quick though. I gave you, just so people can see, I gave you a thing of what I call mud babies, but that's not correct. But just so people understand what it is I'm talking about.
Mud baby.
Yeah, because
I think about mud or clay, and it looks like a little baby to me.
Yeah.
Jesus.
But no, it does. I know, and I've seen these pictures before actually, and it's actually interesting because it's almost like the substitute.
Look at that.
Yeah, it's almost like a substitute as a child almost, and they make it from mud.
What if the woman had a miscarriage and they had sometimes they get a little bit, they didn't have no psychiatrist or psychologist like we do today. So this right here replaces the baby that they should have had, and it helped with their mental capacity in dealing with that. Maybe I'm just throwing that out.
I think it's very interesting. I think that it would be great if we could get more information from the Hazai tribe. They still exist. They're small and they're oppressed, but they do still exist. I think it would be great if we did more research. I think one of the reasons, Africa doesn't get a lot of research, especially hunter-gatherer tribes, because people falsely consider hunter-gatherer tribes primitive and unnecessary because they don't have pottery, they don't have metal tools. In fact, even their arrows sometimes are just wood. They literally just sharpen wood and shoot it. I mean, it's the most simple arrow possible. Their tribe is super simple. And yet it's still complex is what I'm trying to show. It still has value for us to learn. And I feel like it's just ethnocentric ignorance to assume that just because they have some things that seem simple, that they also cannot be complex or didn't inspire later developments of complexity. I feel like that's why I wanted to add this to this, because I personally feel it could be why you end up with figurines, all these Venus figurines in Europe, maybe came from Africa. I mean, so I feel like that people do not talk about that enough, and there's literal evidence to support that is possible. Anyways, so
I know we got you worked up. Not as
well because it pisses me off because people like ethnocentric and racist and bigotry. They.
And no, I feel you on that. And the reason why I say that is because as big as Africa is as a continent, there's so much history. There's so, matter of fact, I have so many discussions, or not discussions. I have so many back and forths with people because they'll always just say sub-Saharan Africa. And I'm like, yo, do you know how much of Africa there is besides sub-Saharan Africa? Literally, do you not understand how much history is in Africa by itself? Not only because of how big it is, but even mentioning sub-Sahara by itself tells me that most people don't understand the idea of how much history is in sub-Sahara by itself. And you're right, a lot of people don't want to go research it because of the simple fact that it will prove in many cases that a lot of things started in Africa, and that takes away a lot of people's pride and ego. They don't want to hear that. Yes. And it's really sad because if you honestly want the truth, then you're going to follow these tips. It's almost following a murder investigation. If you want the truth, you got to go through every single lead. That's why I always say lot of people don't really care for the truth because no detective stops at something that makes them feel good. Just imagine how many people would be in prison right now if they thought the person that they got was the culprit to the crime, rather than sitting there going through every single lead and saying, okay, then that definitely is not true. We can definitely find something older than that or something more accurate than that.
I wanted to bring up something real quick while you're talking about, and before we go on, what he was talking about, and I know we don't want to talk about politics, but the racism
I'm fine
part.
talking about politics.
No, but I mean our podcast is
right.
try to be a little bit low key on it. The thing is it's hard not to talk about it because we're talking about worldwide stuff here. And you and I, Rebirth of the Word, we're veterans and combat veterans. There is more so you in being in that region and area. So you have a lot more than I do in experience. But the thing is that I'm talking about going to war. You had leadership classes, correct, in the military?
Man, when I joined the military, I went straight to combat.
Oh, really? They threw you? I had leadership classes.
Yeah,
Actually, I was in JROTC, and I had leadership classes. And then I also had in basic training, they also taught us in the book leadership as well. And they taught us about the dangers of leadership and why in the military we do what we do. We do everything by the book, and we don't fill our minds with flights of fancies or whatever ideas we have. We don't have a voice, and that voice that's in our head doesn't run. It has to be from the top, the leadership, and we do what the leadership does, right? So I wanted to bring that up, that racism is not really the community itself, but the leadership at the top failed the people, and they wanted the racism so that they can fuel their wars and push forward and taking over another country. And it's happening today, and that happens.
Well, you can take over your own country. I would say. I don't think that it's just used for other countries, which I do agree it is, but even your own country, even countries in Europe, because what's Europe? What they'll start to do is say, well, Europe, but what's German? Do you realize that the concept of those borders is a young concept?
Yeah.
The German lineage, like
Germany used to be bigger, much bigger. It was huge. It took over most of the north. In fact, most of Austria was mostly of Germany, right? Back in the day.
Even if you go further back, because we're talking about prehistory.
That's the royal family.
If we're talking about prehistory,
further than that,
4,500 years ago, there was dark-skinned people in Europe. The light-skinned people are from Siberia. that slowly migrated to Ukraine and then slowly migrated into Europe. So I mean, yeah,
through all those mountain ranges. You know how mountainous it is from Turkey all the way to Ukraine. It is so mountainous, treacherous. It's so treacherous. People would lose their lives just walking that. And you had to walk. There's no flying. There's no trucks or cars or nothing. I mean, you had to walk for days, months, years. In fact, you had to live up north. Forget about coming back. That's too far of a distance. Once you go a certain distance, that's it,
But also people have been amazing throughout history to show us that they can do just that. They can live places you'd think they can't live, whether it's the Arctic, even 45,000 years ago, or in the hottest desert where there's no water. People still find a way. The most mountainous region, there's not one place that hasn't.
That's why boats are the best invention for them back then, right?
Boats are a very important invention, and probably it could have even predated humans, because somehow Neanderthal got to some places that looks like, they were at some point islands. But anyways, going back to this stuff.
Back then, they were probably like, how many horsepowers you got on that boat? That wind horsepower. Oh, yeah.
Well, back then, horses would have been food, so they wouldn't have been riding anything.
Oh, good Lord. My tauntaun.
Speaking of which,
it's too cold here. Let's cut the body. Oh, I could stay warm. I'm going to hide inside my horse. To stay warm.
Go to the one where it has the dead bodies and the skeletons, and then it has the wheel. That thing is like 34,000 years old, showing
Mm.
that the symbol of the sun, which is a spoked wheel, is probably, especially since the step is one of the places that the wheel and the spoked wheel really relates to more than, say, the Middle East that gets it later.
Yeah,
But
that's how
just
Anu's represented like that. The main Anunnaki god, and some other gods also. But yeah, you're right. It is, and that's one of the reasons why.
These
For
are
me,
really good pictures, man. Good job,
I
Damien.
thank you. It's my art. And
Yeah,
now, just real quick to show you, go to that one with the wheels, and
gotcha.
that shows you the oldest wheels, and you'll see the oldest wheel is one of the oldest lost wax castings in copper, in Pakistan.
Wow.
It's 6,000 years old. It's before the potter's wheel, and it still looks like, because it's probably a sun symbol.
Wow.
So I do agree. Like, you weren't wrong that the potter's wheel definitely inspired the evolution of wheels, especially in the Middle East. But the symbol of the wheel itself, to me, goes to the sun. Both at 34,000, here at 6,000, and even later, like you said. And even India today and Buddhism use the wheel symbol as a symbol relating to both divinity and the sun. Anyway, and I agree, some of the Middle Eastern stuff. So, but that's the wheel. Going back to the pottery stuff, go back to the main picture I showed with the 30,000, just so I can explain.
This one right here?
Yeah, that one.
Okay.
Yeah. So 30,000 years ago is the oldest, in a sense, use of fired clay that they have evidence of. Because, of course, we could, at some point maybe find, stuff that later says different. But I think it's an important factor to remember that the first stuff wasn't pottery.
Oh,
I just lost my screen.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, while you're talking,
did it run away?
I was, I've been to Iraq twice and I've been to Afghanistan twice.
I'm going to restart.
You want to restart the whole computer?
Well, can't see nothing.
Okay.
Oh, so he's showing over here that the oldest one is out of China, which is crazy.
Oh, I came back.
You got it. All right.
Oh, the Xinrengdong Cave in Jingxi province, China, dating back approximately 20,000, 19,000 years ago. Damn, there it is, right there. Dude, that is the first. But you're saying 30,000?
Right, 30,000 for fired figurines. It was
okay, not 30,000 years, but in China
is the first pottery.
Yeah, it has the dated way back then. How long does it take for pottery to finally disintegrate or recycle into the ground?
It doesn't recycle in the ground.
It doesn't. Well, it's like making stone. It doesn't do that.
Oh, really? I mean, it's just for our viewers to know. I know, but I want my viewers to know, because they don't know. They don't know that. And it's amazing that pottery can stick around that long. I mean, pottery is so valuable for professors, university professors, people of education. I mean, pottery can tell a story that we don't know about. That's the important thing about pottery. And most of these looters want metal. They want the metal for weapons, for armor, and of course that's going to be missing. All that is missing throughout time. Looters have taken everything, but pottery, they're like, oh, we don't need that, and then they leave it behind. And sometimes destroyed. They step on it, they push it, they break it, they're drunk, whatever. You could only imagine they were whole at one point, and then people just destroyed it or slammed it with their sword, going, oh, destroy this culture. There's people that are disgusting throughout time they don't have knowledge. We say knowledge is power. And then there's ignorance, and people don't think about the future. They think about their time. They think about their society, their culture. And that narcissism is what drives them, fuels them to destroy the other culture, thinking that culture is what was killing their family or destroying their family. And it wasn't. It's just that was a past culture. So they're trying to loot these graves, and they're thinking that these graves belong to, whoever they're fighting. And in reality, it belongs to people like 10,000 years ago. There's nobody there fighting, but they're desecrating these graves. And there's a good reason, because they're fighting a war and they want to stay alive. And it's survival. Once again, we're back to survival and this podcast, because every podcast we go through, it's like we always come down to the one point, the one basic thing. Humanity is going through a survival mode to survive, to live, and to breathe, and to fight these wars, and eventually that's why it's so hard for us to get that knowledge. We have to dig it. We have to trust our archaeologists, anthropologists, to come up with what really happened, and that expertise. We have to really, really respect them for doing such hard work, and donate tons of money to them, because they need it to do all that hard work. Here, go ahead, man. Are you still researching their rebirth?
Nah, he said, oh, there he goes. He's up. There we go. I just went.
Yeah, I'm back. My thing just decided to die on me. I don't know.
Welcome back,
the truth
Damien.
was coming out, and something was trying to stop.
I was just talking bad about you. I says, man, that guy. I mean, I can't see past his bald head. It's so shiny, And then you came back. I was like, oh no, never mind. I'm just messing with you, man.
Yeah. So go back to the.
Hey, I love you. I love your beard, by the way.
Thank you.
Which one? This one or
the other one? Because I was.
It's not up anymore. It's not up anymore.
I put it though.
There we go. There we go.
So I was saying, the fired figurines. Now people did go from that area to Lake Baikal, Siberia, but they for some reason did not continue the fired figurines. So it's like the idea started and then died out. They kept doing figurines, but they did them carving them out of, probably wood also, but certainly out of bone, which is, ivory that they found. So, and they're from 24 to 14. So they're before the fired figurines in Japan, which could be influenced possibly, or maybe they just decided to also do figurines. Now, China doesn't do figurines. The first figurine in China is closer to 14 to 12,000 years ago of a bird. It's not a female. So it has nothing to do with that. So, but Japan gets pottery from people going, and I have a map that shows how the pottery moved from China. So it's 100% fact Japan did not invent its own pottery. Japan got pottery from China. So did Siberia, where it says Siberia pottery. I just put a picture. This shows how pottery goes from right here. I did a map because I wanted to figure out, and I showed the kind of pots that moved. So the pottery goes from China 20,000 years ago. One branch of the pottery goes to South Japan. One branch goes to North Japan. And then there's also one I didn't show on here, which comes actually from Korea, which is another branch, which still is part of the China stuff, but a younger branch, the Jom pottery. See where it says the red Insepet down at the lower right-hand corner? It says Insepet Japan pottery, rote pottery, meaning not by a wheel.
Yeah, is that the same as the Anu people that's there?
Yes and no. Okay. So the Anu people would be part of the Jom lineage that continued. Jom lineage, like that, someone just did a thing in a research that a lot of the earliest Jom were D haplogroup. So D haplogroup would have been black-looking people, dark skin. I'll show you real quick, Dak, just as you asked.
Yeah, brown. I noticed they either use the word brown. They state that a lot of people try to avoid the word black.
No, I think they were black. I think it's completely wrong. Later, people did get lighter skin, but the branch is 58,000 years old from D, because D and E were together, and E is in Africa, right? It's mostly dark skin. But this lineage left like one of the earliest to leave Africa and went all by itself. Like some of the other ones, people went together. D, I think, did its own thing. And once again, it moved in a way that's pretty crazy. Here, do you see the picture? So this is D people, even today. The Amonese people are D without other influence. Well, they're black people. I mean, they
Well, I
look
would
like
say, I always say,
but they consider them Asian, by the way.
yeah. And matter of fact, I mean, the oldest haplogroup in Africa, that group of individuals named the San people, I heard it said different ways, SAN people, they have Asian features, and they have one of the oldest haplogroups in the world.
Well, they have they have B, but so do the Hazite people that make the what I called mud babies. Both of those are a branch of haplo B. So, and they both have like anywhere from 15 to 10,000 year old culture. So yeah, they're definitely old. Yes. And I agree. Even the Hazite people have some features that look, different. But Africa, like you said, is a big continent. A lot of people had different features, and sometimes for different reasons, like different people mixing in. Because the Hazite people were B, but they also got an influx of people that were E, and E is a younger haplogroup than B is. But anyways, my point is, I'm trying to say though, the first people to go to Japan are related later to the Jom people. Is D2, I think A, and the people that are in the Amonese, they're D2, maybe it's D1. He's D1A and D1B. D1B, I think, is the Amonese people, and D1A is the people in Japan. But we also know, reason we know too that they had to be dark, also the ones that made it to Japan and didn't somehow lighten along the way, because people in the Philippines and that whole area that down from that where it hit Japan, they have D also, just like the Amonese people, and they call them, even I don't know if there are very many of them today still, but they call them negritos because they're that's like a Spanish term for basically the real indigenous people of the Philippines were black people that had D DNA and relate to the Amonese people that are pretty far apart from where they're at. But it's because D went to both places and then distributed down and took over these islands. So, like I said, that shows, and the reason I bring this up is because sometimes they'll show like Jom people and they'll show them as looking really light skinned. And I'm like, maybe at some point, but certainly their ancestors 30,000 years ago showing them as light skinned, I think is propaganda or misinterpretation. I don't think it's like accurate to me.
Wow.
I'm an anarchist, so I feel like I just want the truth, and I really don't care if the whole world was black people. Great. I mean, it makes no difference to me. I don't care about white race or any bullshit. Who gives a fuck? I care about humanity, and all of us matter. So it really, to me, just does not matter. So I don't get hung up that things could be this way or that way. Who gives a shit? It doesn't matter to me. I feel like I have no, bigoted or ethnocentric skin in the game. Who gives a fuck, to me personally? So I'm just saying, but it does make it piss me off when I know that things are probably facts that are being fucking hidden. That does piss me off, especially when it's for a racist and bigoted reason. Mm-hmm. Anyways, so yes, going back to the picture in Japan, just so we can go back to the Jom people and the Anu people, like you said, which I also have a picture of them too, but I don't want to go there because I want to focus on pottery. But yeah, so the Jom people at this point probably still relatively dark skinned. Certainly the first ones that show up, D, before pottery shows up, absolutely dark skinned, probably just black. But the people by this point at 12,000 years ago, still not white skin, so there were no white people there at all, but probably could have already been a little bit lighter, but probably brown, like a really dark, Hispanic person or something.
Coffee brown.
But certainly, coffee brown. Certainly not white in any kind of fucking way. So, but yeah. So
depending how much milk.
Like a lot of times, white people, bigots, will say, well, white culture gave everyone everything. I'm like, man, you don't know fucking history.
There's a lot of people out there like that, and I wanted to say, a lot of people, the reason why I think people avoid the word black, because they always say sub-Saharan Africa. Like I said, everybody brings that up, that I see, that's in the world, that's a bigot or a racist. They always say nothing came from sub-Saharan Africa, and I was just like, bro, you have no idea how much history is just in that area by itself, but let alone how big the continent of Africa is, to sit here and say something so stupid like that. Because I mean, I see all the time on social media, I want the truth, I want the facts, I want to know this. And then you say, hey, look, man, I found this in Africa and this seems to be older than what you're presenting now. Oh, they ain't got nothing to do with, that's fake, that's blah blah blah. And I was like, have you seen this material before? They're quick to react, and rather than going in there and saying, I didn't know that, let me go deep dive in there. And then a lot of people will go to Grok and ChatGPT and ask a quick question and think that Grok and ChatGPT is going to give you the right answer, which we all know that is not going to do. Matter of fact, when you ask Grok a question, you can see the sources it pulls it from when it starts. It literally starts with a lot from Reddit. And I cannot see how people can believe something like that so fast when there's thousands of books and literally tons of information out there that you can have for free in your hand, and people will spend more time arguing on the internet rather than researching. So it just blows my mind, the words that we use. And not to get religious or anything, it all goes back to the Tower of Babel, confusing people's language. Some people will say one thing, somebody say that same word somewhere else, and it means something totally different, and now they're arguing about what that word means.
Well, people say different things, certainly because they have, a motivation behind it. If they were like me and just cared about what's the truth, they wouldn't have this same problem of trying to fit an ideology. What I want to do is fit what the facts are. That's it. I want to know what's the truth. Here's the thing really quick, of you talking about the Anu people, just to explain like why. So the Anu people, it shows here at this top in the left-hand corner of their range, which is more today than just originally. Originally, they did own half of the lower island also, but they never were the entire all the islands of Japan itself. They were more, the Anu themselves, more related to the middle and then the whole north, including, as you see, parts of what's now Russia. So their fight for their own freedom doesn't just happen because of Japan taking away their indigenous rights. They're indigenous also to parts of Russia. Anyways, just to go back. So they have a lighter skin and a look, and some of it's because they have some of the Siberian Russian DNA and not just original Jom people. Although I think they have 40 or 60% Jom DNA. So they have more, because I think the regular Japanese have like 10 or 5. It's way lower. But of the original Jom people, like you asked. But anyway, so just to explain that really quick. But to go back to the pottery stuff in general, that picture, right? So pottery moves from China to Japan, and then later, as you see, Japanese is older than Siberia. The Siberia gets at 6,000 to 12,000, and Japan got it before that. They get it from 16,500 to 14,000. So they get it way before, in a sense, Siberia does. Once Siberia gets it, that stuff in Lake Baikal, which is right above Mongolia, there's that blue little lake. Once pottery hits there, it goes over through Kazakhstan into Ukraine. It also goes from there down into Iran. And which is why I have a feeling that it could have, because the first pottery is on the border of Iran and Iraq, which is really close to where these people with R2 male DNA went from Siberia or Kazakhstan all the way down to Iran and to the border of Iraq, right where the pottery is. And they have the first pottery practically, and they also have the first goat herding. And then they also go from there into Russia through the Cossack Mountains to the place where the Yama people are, which is the area that it then becomes all the white people of Europe. So some of the mythology also could have spread that way. But pottery went straight across from Siberia into Europe, influenced from China in two different ways. One was male DNA N, female DNA N, and which is different, and male DNA R1A. R1A is a very more like is nowadays R1A, so people understand, is more like Poland, is more like Russia, Ukraine, and Estonia, Lithuania, those like more northern. All the rest of Europe is mainly, besides I, male, which is older, is R1B. That's when people think of Aryans, whatever, though, they think either R1B or R1A.
Yeah.
Although R1A is probably more likely, although no one was calling themselves Aryans. That actually is something that is mainly in India and broke off from India and Iran, yet Iran doesn't call them Aryans, which I always tell people is because it's different clans that broke off. So the ones that went to India might have said they were Aryan, but that doesn't mean every clan before them was that also. So, but people don't care about history. What they really care about is it matches some bigoted, scheme they have. But also, to me, none of these people were pure. So they always act like what's pure. None of them is pure. In fact, even the Yama people that eventually become white people, they were darker skinned males, or at least ruddy skinned males that chose lighter females to mate with, eventually then having children that were chosen to be more white, and more white eventually ended up in white Europe. So, but their ancestors were dark-skinned males that chose more white females in a sexual selection. Anyways, I'm just saying, so if they go back to the history of their ancestors, those men were not white people. It's just saying that, so that the whole, to me, concept in general is just a bunch of bigoted lies. It doesn't even match like reality. Anyways,
it's the ego, bro. It's the ego. What could be the difference? I mean, you're really mad about, like when you said about Europe earlier, a lot of people say, it's Europe. And I'm like, that doesn't mean it's white.
Yeah.
I mean, you're saying that's supposed to be an indicator of being white, which is not. We know Africa is brown skinned because of the idea of the equator and the science that says that, the oldest bones and so on and so forth from that area. But then a lot of people will say, well, we found the jawbone in Spain that goes 40,000 years. And that's all they found was a jawbone. So I'm sitting here like, okay, how do you know that's not?
But like I have a video before I talked to a scientist about the DNA. And I said, every culture was dark skinned. The Cro-Magnon, which is the Orca Nation, and then the Graviton, both those dark skin, almost black. Then the next culture after that, the Magdalenian, they were also super dark skinned to almost black. Then you had, after that, you have Western hunter-gatherers, which were seriously dark skinned, ranging on almost black. There might have been a few random, but so from 40,000 or 50,000 all the way down to like 12 to 9,000, all of them in Europe, all of Europe, were all dark skinned, almost black.
Mm-hmm.
So original Europeans, but like you said, and I've also said, they came from Africa. It's black explorers or whatever. The part that you don't get that, it's just wild to me. Not you, but I'm talking about like
I get you.
People that choose to like think differently. Like, what do you think? You think your ancestors were always white? What a joke.
Yeah, I actually did a podcast discussion with a geneticist named Dr. Keith Chang. He's like one of my first podcast interviews. Like this is when I first started doing interviews. And he is the founder of what is called SLC24A5, him and his team. And that's literally the gene that causes the Caucasian skin. And he wasn't looking for it to prove that black or white came first. He was what he's trying to do, and what he's still trying to do is find a cure for skin cancer. and
Right.
that's how he found it. And
right, and here's you can show a map so people can see where it came from, how it moved, what time it moved, and where.
man, see, you on it like white on rice, man. No,
Well,
that's
right.
seriously.
And for me, just so people understand too, I didn't start with trying to prove this either. I just wanted to know, like originally, like you're talking about, like how. So originally, I wanted to research religion, which I thought was 12,000 years old and started in the Neolithic. This is what I thought, because people say stuff like this, and I didn't know. And the more I knew, the more I realized I need to learn more. And the more I learn, I need to learn more. And then the more I realized that, like, wow, why are we not even starting in Europe and shit? I need to start in Africa. And so I had, but then I wanted to learn too, well, how did things change? When did they change? Why did they change? And so, yeah, this is about.
You try to look for the origins. That's what I try to do. I wanted to find the origins. That was my whole point. Was that I asked them in the interview too. I asked them. I said, "Hey, man, is it true that the reason why we have brown skin or dark skinned people is because of the simple fact of the equator?" And he says yes, and he explained it. He explained the reason why. I mean, we've been taught that since I'll say at least kindergarten, from what I can remember about that. So, and you're right on, man. My mom is white and my father is African American.
Right.
I went home to two parents that had one white skin, one black skin, and I know the history of racism. Just not just in America, but my mom is German. You know what I mean? And my grandfather, he was an older gentleman. And I'm 42 now, and they passed away a long time ago. But he never had a hatred bone in his body for any of us, for any of the children. My Uma, my grandmother, she was, I mean, I miss her till this day. I can tell you, having a family like that, I couldn't be, well, black people are more important than white people, and white people are more important than black, because then that means I'm choosing which parent I love the most or cherish the most, and that would be so stupid and ignorant. So of course I had the chance to ask these questions, and the curiosity going home, seeing a white parent and a black parent, it was like, okay, well, what is the facts about black and white skin? What is the scientific data that talks about this? Not what somebody's personal opinions say, but what the scientific data. And that's why I found Dr. Key Chang, because he actually funds this research himself now, because I guess he was getting too close to the truth for a lot of stuff. And, they had, once that happens, people start taking your funding away and all this other stuff. So he funds this research himself. Now, this is what's crazy to me. You got a man who is funding research for skin cancer himself. And just imagine what he would be able to find if he had the support that should be given to him for this, not just by the university that he works with, but just the government itself. Cancer is hurting a lot of people, and like I said, he wasn't trying to look who came first or this or that. He was and he's Chinese. This dude's he's Chinese, so he had no dog in this fight at all. He wasn't a white guy and he wasn't a black guy. He was Chinese. Well,
right, and just like me, I shared this stuff, right? Because this is basically, this picture right here is like 5, 6, 8 different sources put together, like, and made more understandable. And I have never had anybody debunk any of my stuff, any of it. But of course, I use good sources for all my stuff. And then, of course, I have a blog where I then list the reference links that people can go to search out anything I say. And I think that people should take like you said, SLC 245A or SLC 45A2. Just look on Wikipedia. There's Wikipedias for just that number, and look up what the cultures are I list. Afro-Angora 3. That person is the first one, blonde hair and light skin in the world. 18,000. But it already was getting lighter, but the first one to have these alleles and stuff. And then where I say it went to the Terran mummies, it comes from Avangora 3 related DNA, which was R1 DNA that relates to the maternal line, not because R1A and R1B male also kind of did this similar almost thing.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, I want to go back to talking about the pottery stuff, but I just wanted to say that people understand that pottery and ideas and stuff moved with what these arrows are showing. This is how I think that people need to grasp it. It's not like one thing. That's also why it is related. I learned this stuff. I go to the pottery ones that I showed you for Göbekli Tepe and all that. There's a thing.
That one, right?
Right. So in the Middle East area, right? So we showed the places that weren't the Middle East. In the Middle East area, because I don't want to focus on Europe and all that. The Middle East area, which was what I wanted to address, in Israel, they made these stone like bowls or whatever containers, and they made some of the first beer at 13,000. So, and then there's wine made at Korkatepe, and Korkatepe is important. I'll show a picture so you can from a link. Here. Excuse me. So Korkatepe, you see right here, these bowls they made at Korkatepe, which is like 12,700, 12,500 years ago. So before even Göbekli Tepe. Now, some of them, not a lot, but some of the ones at Göbekli Tepe look almost like this and have similar designs on the outside, similar sort of thickness, which was crazy to me. These are stone bowls. They even put a lip. Like, why, bro? Did you go that crazy to even make like a lip on it and make it look perfect? And it's thinness. It's like,
look at that.
I remember when I first saw this, the first thing I thought, someone's in control. There's no way you get now.
Okay, look how perfect that is.
At one site, if it was kind of like this, okay, maybe it's because someone has OCD, right? You could try to, give that as an explanation. But I'll show you another site, which they do the same thing, which starts to tell you, wait a minute, something's going on. So here is, I shared the wrong one, I think. Yeah, I did. Hold on.
Have they done the mathematical calculations on the circles from the top and the bottom to see if they match the same circumference?
I don't know if they have. So this right here, where is it? Let me go to his videos.
Because that would be interesting if they are like exact, like the top of the clay pottery is exactly the same size circumference as the bottom. If they actually discover that, it's insane. And it's mathematically exact. And even the circumference could be equal to the amount of pi. Maybe they had a concept of what pi is, So
I don't know, but it does look like they were doing it with intent. It's certainly, they see here, this says,
I mean, that's what everybody wants to know.
300 looking stone bowls.
Okay, so this obviously looks like something that somebody built these because it's useful. They're building it because they need it.
And then there's another site that this website lists.
The one you showed previously, they made it specifically to identify a family or the death of a family or a specific level of who that person is, kind of thing. But that right there looks like this is for use.
We're in graves. But just think of it as a corpus, though, because several graves, so it's not just one. And there's also, they did like, I think 180 different bowls and stuff. So it wasn't like one time either. It's like what I'm trying to show, though, this is what I'm trying to make a point. It can't be just OCD. It literally is someone culturally is saying, this is what we're doing, which is important to grasp. So Granite Tepe, they also make these plates. Come on, they look almost like shit you would buy, and things, right? And then I also want to show you that at Göbekli Tepe, because it's important to grasp what I'm trying to say. They're doing these extremely defined things at a time that it doesn't make any sense for them to do this. Hold on.
Yeah, I gotta say why you're doing that. Yeah, there. I look at pottery as what we use as plates and cups as today. That's the usage for it, basically. And
Right.
sometimes, and a lot of times, not just for sustaining food or eating food or anything like that, but because, like Fat Jesus said, I mean, it was a representation of somebody. That's where you get the depictions of the mythologies of the gods. Most of the mythology started in depictions of pictographic script on pottery and other art, such as the figurines that you talked about.
Right. So here's Göbekli Tepe. Do you see how these bowls are kind of crude and not as nice?
Mm-hmm.
But then they have some like this right here with designs on them that are thinner and have designs that are kind of similar to and more refined that are kind of similar to the ones at Korkut Tepe. And like I said, Korkut Tepe is important because it's older than Göbekli Tepe. And besides that, it's better pottery, or it's not pottery, but better bowls. They've done like look at the bowls and the
More
beadwork.
sophisticated.
Sophisticated. Now it's important. Like I said, when I first saw this, and I'll show you another picture that shows a whole bunch of them, like like a corpus of them. You see that? Blow it up.
Yeah, that's crazy that you say that, because a lot of people don't talk about the artifacts that they find that go back with Tepe or any of the other Tepes. They always talk about the structures that they found, but the pottery
Right.
is going to tell you a story also.
Absolutely.
I feel like when you talk about just the structures, the walls and all that, you're just talking about the tip of the iceberg and you're forgetting everything underneath the water.
Oh, there's all kinds of stuff to Göbekli Tepe. We could do a show on it sometime because there's a bunch of different things that relate.
Message.
So this is Korkut Tepe, which is at least 7,000 to not 7,000. At least 1,000 to maybe 12,000 or so or more older than the stuff at Göbekli Tepe. And like I said, the pottery stuff almost looks like shit you could buy today. And this isn't pottery, though. This is stone vessels carved to almost perfection, or certainly, and I'm not trying to say high technology perfection. I'm just saying at a level that's beyond just use. You don't need to use a bowl like a Göbekli Tepe, somewhat crude looking, thick, whatever. There's no need to make them perfect. There's no need. It's like crazy. Now, like I said, for me, I don't think high technology, aliens or something. I think control. Now, the thing on the other side is the evidence of control. Those are mace heads. Now, the oldest mace heads in possible slavery is Korkut Tepe, the place that they have these extremely well-defined things. And a lot of, to me, the mace head stuff stems out from the stuff at Korkut Tepe. A lot of the art, a lot of the symbolism that was at Korkut Tepe, which is earlier than Göbekli Tepe, is seen all over Turkey, including Göbekli Tepe, seeming to be that Korkut Tepe was the beginning of this new sort of set of ideas and levels of control. So I'll show you the mace head things.
The thicker ones look like they're for grinding stuff.
Well,
they're so much thicker.
But they absolutely have mace head. This is a mace head at Korkut Tepe.
Like everybody had to have one. That's what it looks like. They went to IKEA and they all bought one for each household.
No, because
they all had to have it.
At Korkut, well, talking about burials. So at burials at Korkut Tepe, they would have a male burial with artifacts and like 4, 5, 6 mace heads.
Yeah,
like more than even a person would need. But I've told someone before, they were more fishers than just hunters and gatherers, and they would fish like sturgeon and carp and some big fish. It's not unthinkable, possibly, that the authority didn't start with cracking people's heads. I do think this has to do with authority, like I said, but it could have started hitting fish like as a way to like stun them. People use bats even sometimes today for really big fish. So I don't, because I try to look at a natural explanation of the person's environment and like, why did Korkatepe get this and other people didn't? But like I said, as soon as I saw the pottery being so well defined, my first thought is, who's controlling this? And there is evidence of hierarchy and control at Korkatepe. And there is evidence of mace heads at Korkatepe, certainly in male burials. And it's not like you said everyone gets a mace head. No, some burials don't have that. It seems to be like almost an emerging elite. Like I said, and it may not have been originally that they were using them to crack people's heads, but I think eventually we absolutely have evidence that they were used to crack people's heads. So just to show that there's a connection between Power's rise and pottery. And like I said, both of them happen at Korkatepe. So go back to the picture of Göbekli Tepe. So in alcohol, right, is seen all these different places I'm showing on this thing is all relating to alcohol and showing what times the oldest alcohol and what area it was and then how it really went with pottery. So it also, I think, beyond Power, certainly alcohol at a certain point becomes religious, and it was maybe from the beginning, because it doesn't seem like they're drinking all the time. So it could be just more like ceremonial alcohol use, and that also could be what helped inspire why pottery maybe sort of emerged, especially with these stone vessels. It's possible. And like you said, being in grave context as opposed to just non-funerary context, Göbekli Tepe seems to kind of be, obviously doesn't have lots of burials, but having the pottery like put in piles in a corner of the temple, or what could be a temple, likely used as the temple, could reference that once again, these are ceremonial uses like feasting. Anyways, so I want to go to the blog itself that I did for the Rise of Pottery.
Okay.
So Rise of Pottery Middle East, because this has to do with before we get to the Ubaidian, in a sense, there's stuff that's going on where Jaramo pottery, right, is happening at 7, 8, 9, thousand, because you add 2,000 years to whatever the BC is generally. That's what you do. So the Jaramo is happening, and that's that, like I was saying before, that's over like near Iran and Iraq border. And then you have whiteware, which is 9, 10, 11,000 years ago. And whiteware is made out of like plaster sort of thing. So it's not really ceramic. And later they have dark faced ware, which still isn't exactly a kind of similar as just ceramic. But these things are happening in this area right here, which also is not really Göbekli Tepe. So it's interesting because where it says early pottery Neolithic, that's closer to where Göbekli Tepe is, but that doesn't happen until 9,000. So it's kind of odd that stuff at 11 and 12,000 is doing stuff with stone vessels, and then nothing, and then not till 9,000. But the problem is that's the same time the stuff from Iran could have influenced the stuff going up this way. Even more interesting, but also sort of related, Central Turkey seems to get pottery before even Iran does. They get it like 10,000 years ago, 10,300 or 10,200 or 10,100. They get the beginning of stuff that could be, like the earliest pottery, which is weird because that area is later in getting some of the farming package. So it's just like I was saying too about the Africa. So it's there is DNA of in females in the Iran area and in females. The first place is in central Turkey, right at the same place there's the pottery. And that DNA also is in Siberia and in Europe from Siberia. So I don't know exactly, but it does seem likely that that could be what helped start the females, like you were talking about at the beginning, at making the pottery in Turkey. Or it could be that central Turkey just inspired, like Africa, pottery all on their own. I think it's more likely influence, but it is possible that it was a self-generated. For sure, at some point that did influence the early pottery Neolithic, and down into Israel where it says pre-pottery Neolithic C. At some point it did, and including maybe even into Africa from central Turkey. But also the influence, like go into the Ubaidians, they would have been influenced from this Iran pottery, and then the pre-Hassan, these people that were above coming down. Anyways, just to show you my map on that. And then
it's a good timeline because it gives you're following the timeline. It's not precise and exact. Of course, nothing is precise and exact. Nothing in this world is. There's always some kind of off, a little bit. But when I really appreciate your information because you really try to pinpoint the origins, and that's what matters. It's not about feelings. It's not about what you personally think, it's none of that. It all has to go down to, okay, do you want the facts? And if you want the facts, you got to go with the leads. The leads tell you the timeline. The timeline is what you do. It's the same thing like when I talked about detectives. They want to know the first thing, if a crime happens, they want to know where were you at this time.
Right.
So they can eliminate all the other possibilities out there. They want to know exactly what you was doing at this time, and do you have an alibi? And this is the same thing with this history. Your alibi is the pottery and the data that they collected from that pottery to indicate the timeline of that pottery. So that's why I really, really enjoy what you share, because a lot of people go off on emotions, and if we went off on emotions, we'll never know anything about our history.
Right. And so I try to show stuff too that people can go to look at my blogs, look at my links, and go or research the things it says. Yeah, and I inspire you to do that. How I learned stuff was researching on my own. I'm an autodidact, meaning that I'm self-taught. And I've done this since 2006, just wanting to understand. So, like you said, but if I look at all these things, even at the farthest point, none of these are really influencing Africa yet. So the fact, I'm just going back to what I'm saying. So it has to be the fact that Africa invented their own pottery at the first pottery. Later, they get stuff from Europe, but the first pottery can't, just like in China, it cannot be influenced from the Middle East. Just so people can grasp this, because like you said about civilization, people are like, oh, well, the Middle East inspired all civilization everywhere, like, and all technology. Like, no, they didn't.
Yeah, you gotta. Yeah, I can tell you, I read Samuel Noah Kramer's book, and he's a big. He was a big advocate for the Sumerians being the first civilization because of what he has. Actually, this book called the 39 First, the history of Sumer, basically, and it's basically these first things that happened in this world, and pottery is listed as one of them. But like you said, you can find pottery older than the Sumerians. Matter of fact, I honestly believe the Sumerians weren't even first on anything. My personal opinion, like I said, I try not to share my personal opinion, but to know the facts, I don't think the Sumerians are the first on anything, on hardly anything. I think they are just a group of individuals who came together to say, hey, we need to start recording this stuff. And that's when they started doing it. And they took their culture and history from people from around the world. And what I mean by that is the simple fact that you can look at Göbekli Tepe. You can see that's pretty old. And then you can find places in Africa that are older than what is Göbekli Tepe.
Can I throw you a curveball?
Go ahead.
What if we find over 33 mummies on the ground and there's no pottery that whatsoever. What kind of society would it be if it doesn't have pottery at all? Would we consider them non-intelligent, or they're just not, like everybody else that is intelligent making pottery? Would we be automatically to think, oh, these are non-intelligent, they're just animals, so they didn't have the technology to make pottery. Usually everybody else makes pottery, but these people, these beings or whatever, they never made any pottery. What assumption would archaeologists have?
There are already places that have burials without pottery. Matter of fact, you won't find pottery in some civilizations at all because they believe there was sin. So that's already out there. I can't remember the
Yeah,
exact.
Maybe they think their soul would be captured
No, no,
inside
no,
the
no, no,
pottery
no.
or
It's not.
something.
No. It's just that pottery, anything that um, is because
From the ground, right?
it'll go off subject, but it's basically
No,
the
it's
fact
okay.
that it's just the fact that not everybody needed pottery for everything. Everybody has different reasons for different, like Damien said earlier. Some people just used wood. They would cut down a tree and shape the tree into whatever form they needed for whatever reason.
And wood doesn't last long unless it was
Yeah.
in
correct.
mud.
So it is not impossible that there were pots
Mm-hmm.
made out of wood. That this is absolutely could have been the case. I mean, but we can't tell. And just like we do know, I think it's 12 or 14,000, maybe it's 10,000. I can't remember exactly off the top of my
That's
head.
a good point.
They have
wood pot.
baskets that were weaved, and they put like either beeswax or pitch or something.
Yeah.
Man, what the heck?
You know what's incredible? It's like Pompeii when it was when the lava rolled through the town and the city, and the clay pots were the ones that survived, and anything that was weaved or woven was completely burned because of the heat, the high intensity heat, and that heat was continuous. Like it stayed there. It could bend metal practically, because it was melting everything, and it was a slow crawl for the lava to go through too. So it's like intense heat continually for hours, and everything was under lava. But right now they're digging up. They're still digging up Pompeii, by the way. And I watch these videos. And I'm so intrigued. It's so amazing just to see what is preserved under all that. Have you ever seen any of the videos on YouTube
No, I haven't watched them.
with Pompeii? Oh man, yeah. Today still doing excavations. They got places where humans can't go, and you got streamers are like putting the cameras over the fences, like, look, check it out. This is the stuff they're doing. They're not showing the public. It's so cool. So it's yeah. There's some new stuff coming out in the future about Pompeii and the artists and the artistry. They even pulled up one where they have the floor. They had like these little chips of pot. You know how they take pottery and they break it down and they make designs on the ground, right? We've seen that in modern times. Oh, we lost Damien.
Yeah, he's
And they put
restarted.
and because that lasts longer, it actually lasted through the lava, and they're digging it up and they could find. And the same thing in Rome. They've been digging up in Rome, and somebody was renovating their house, and they dug up and they found a whole area with the pottery, the pottery floor, broken pieces, right? Making a design all over the floor. They can't touch it. They can't break it. Why would you? Why would you want to do that, right? It's in your home and everything. But I don't know what the museum's going to do with it. Maybe they're going to unsurface it, take it piece by piece away from the guy's house and put it in the museum, which would be really cool. They'll make it as a mural up on a wall or something. But I for one would love it for my house, but that'd be terrible to keep, right? Because you're taking a piece of history and for yourself and not for everybody else.
Man, my internet today is really sucking.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you look like you're over at McDonald's, bro.
I told you, man, the technology today, bro, is not. It's just. I don't know what it was. I had to, like I told you earlier, I had to restart my computer because for some reason
it's Elon Musk. He's trying to sell his satellite internet.
Right. So here I have the pottery showing arrows, right, to give you an idea, showing and also the artifacts that they found. This is an article that I then drew on their drawing. and explain my thinking, but in relation to what they're showing, but gave my thinking of 1, 2, 3 to show you like how I think it went. So it starts in China. The pottery goes to Japan first, then to Siberia, then from Siberia, I think it then goes to Europe and over into the Middle East, right? And so then I show a DNA that almost does the similar thing. The DNA, literally the red arrows, it starts in the area that's China. I just am putting the DNA in relation to what pottery is doing because they're both almost at the same time doing almost the same thing.
And what's crazy is that we don't get a lot of information from China because of the communistic rule, and they're mostly focused on making farmland. So they just bulldoze over everything, and then we got people right now. They are now digging up around China, and they're finding these ancient artifacts now.
It's because they respect the dead. That's why.
Yeah.
See, Western civilization, as far as us, we don't do that. That's why we dig up mummies and burial sites.
We dig up grandma.
Yeah, we don't respect. Well, I'm not gonna say we personally as us three, but as a society and culture, we don't respect the dead. We literally will dig up cemeteries to put a parking lot up. For
and move the cemetery around. Like, we did it with the indigenous
and also,
people.
I think it goes back to what the imperialism, like you're talking about governments and the original stuff, like you said, people think Western culture. They think like Hellenistic Greece and younger. Like as soon as the philosophers, like 2,000-year-old history and younger is the only shit that they respect. So stuff that's anything else, anywhere else than just that little, Europe centric, they don't care about respecting at all. And certainly any time that's, in a sense, older than this is not of relevance in the same way, other than to prove, if they can, a narrative.
Yeah. Think of the artifacts. They dig up a mummy here. That mummy would get shipped across the world, and the stuff that was with the mummy, like the artifacts and all that stuff, will be at a whole different museum. And the whole point was to keep it together so that way this person can use this in the afterlife. And we, as a civilization, a culture of Western mentality, we don't respect that. And that's why China is very adamant on telling the world what they have, because people will go out there and start digging on their own. Yeah, they'll eventually get caught in this, that, and the third, but they keep their history alive by respecting it and leaving it where it's at.
Right. And speaking of mummies, right, some people don't know there was Egyptian mania in Europe. And talking about disrespecting the dead, they literally would eat mummies. They thought I can't remember why, but they thought it had some like property that was beneficial or something.
I remember watching the 90s cartoon shows. There's some 90s cartoon shows out there where you would see somebody eating it like beef jerky. That's how crazy.
It's crazy. We're talking about disrespecting the dead. Like, holy shit.
Yeah, like it was for monetary gains also. You know, it was.
So, but this right here is an article someone did after that other article that I show. Stuff starts in Asia, or they were saying they felt like it probably did, and then this article says yes, it did, and it also is how the first hunter gatherers in Europe also got pottery from Asia, and so I show the red arrows to show like how it moved, and then they did the pottery. I didn't do this; they did this. And then also below the map below it is showing all the pottery in the world and at what time. And like I said, so the darker that is older, and you see that there's stuff, in Asia and in Africa, and yet not the Middle East. So like I was saying, with that, we already explained that in the other first map that I showed. And you notice those are not connected. So I do think that Siberia and that's connected. I do think maybe even the Middle East can kind of, you could say, because especially the influence from Asia. But Africa's first stuff, that literally is their own stuff. And so, and I also, just so people understand, I don't personally ever use the word civilization because, and I'm not like some anarchists could be anti-civilization, like an anarcho-primitivist. I'm not that. I just have read the word and the concept, and it literally says you have to be a society that oppresses people. If you don't have income inequality, then you're not considered a civilization. Well, as an anarchist, my goal would be that we end income inequality, or at least to as large amount as possible. So I'm against what people call civilization. And I don't see that as a great thing for humanity, that we have to have masters and people oppressing us to be civilized. If that's your definition of civilization, I don't agree with it. Just my own statement.
I don't agree with certain. Okay, so I don't agree with Oxford's idea of a civilization only because it separates so much stuff in this world. But I do respect it because they give an idea for their theories and their ideas. So that's why I'm very cautious of sharing my opinion and only like sharing what I found in history from reading and research myself, is because I want people to say, or at least look at it as, okay, look, you this may be accurate or it may be inaccurate. The point is how do you go about understanding what a civilization is? I hate using that word too, because that people use that word just for so many different reasons, and then it just gets lost to me now.
Hey, I wanted to mention something real quick. You guys know who Samuel Longhorn Clemens is? Mark Twain.
Yes.
And he himself was he would call
not when you said it like that, but Mark Twain, yes.
Yeah. Western nations calling other cultures savages while committing far more barbaric, disrespectful acts themselves. So he was also talking about Twain's frequently used the contrast between Western travelers and nations like China to highlight the deep-seated arrogance. And then it also went on to, you are likely thinking of what it was saying, The Innocents Abroad is a book that he was writing about. And then Twain encounters Western tourists and archaeologists in Egypt and the Middle East cheerfully digging up graves, defacing ancient monuments. This is in his time. And even buying chunks of mummified human remains as souvenirs. You know, they place them in their houses. Twain pointed out the staggering hypocrisy. If an Egyptian or Chinese traveler came to England or America and started digging up Christian graveyards to take home skeletal souvenirs, the West would label them bloodthirsty savages. Yet because the West did it under the guise of science or traveling, they viewed it as civilized. There's your Oxford dictionary there, buddy.
I totally agree. So, and I do appreciate scholarship. What I'm saying is the concept that it has to have a complex society is one that's a state society. What? It has to have, like it says here, civilization is organized among diverse populations, divided into more or less rigid hierarchical social structures, divisions of labor, with a ruling elite and a subordinate urban and rural population. What the fuck? No.
Well, no. That's not, somebody edited that. Somebody, they think that they have the right to edit that and write that. So whoever edited that, pretty much wrote that, and it doesn't make much sense. Oh, there's
Princeton, this one's from Princeton University Press. Also, but my point is, I'm saying
in 2023.
So see Cambridge University. I'm just making a comment that it is a bigoted belief that it has to have ruling elite and subordinates. And I just feel like that shouldn't even be fucking in what we call civilized. I don't think having people that are not having their needs taken care of and so that we can give all the money to an elite makes it civilized. Like, what the shit? Especially because
if you try to change that, on that website, you'll be condemned by those universities. That's who you're going against whenever you're talking about.
I'm not scared to go against a university. When I say that I support, archaeology and stuff, I always say that I support probably 95% of what they think.
What I'm bringing up is that what your interpretation is much more correct. but you're going against their textbooks, what they believe in, what they teach, their curriculum. And if you try to change their curriculum or make them want to say, oh, I'm sorry, we were wrong, they're not going to do that because they're an institution much higher than you are, and they want to maintain their status. So here you are, says, no, that's not right. And but you're not part of a university. They're going to dog you down and say, no. And that's the world that we live in. And even if we're right and they're wrong, the wrong part is going to be written on the internet, and then all of us searching on the internet with Google AI, it's going to be spitting out like a parrot exactly the wrong thing. And that's what we need to work
probably
on.
If you talk to professors and not like the ruling college, because the college has to deal with the billionaires' donations or whatever, the rich elite, where the person teaching is probably not the same as the person, in a sense, constructing the college.
We had Professor Sean Schweiner with his book. Remember Rebirth of the Word? He's a professor, and he will tell you the politics of the university. I sat down long hours and days when he was staying with me because he ended up homeless at one time. This is after graduation, of course, not during, when I was going to school. You can't play favoritisms, right? And he would tell me about the politics and everything, and he has to play along because if you go against them, you find yourself out on the street with no job.
But that's what I'm just trying to classify, is that I don't see individual archaeologists or whatever, or people that are professors at college, the same as the college elite that are, in a sense, orchestrating the stuff, because the people at the top do have rich donors that they, where the other people are just workers. So anyways,
money talks, bullshit walks. That's what they say.
But still, even under that system, I think there still is a lot of good stuff that's produced. I just clarify that I do not believe 100% without thinking anybody's ideas. In fact, I would challenge my own. I have changed my own because sometimes I learn something more or whatever. So, but in general, like I said, I generally say about 95% of what archaeologists, historians, ethnographers, even mythologists, most of the stuff they say, I can kind of agree. I do have, issues that I pick when I see something that I don't agree with. Like I said, that civilization saying it has to be, elites and subordinates. What? How the fuck is that civilized? So if someone is all equal, then they're not civilized? If they have all kinds of other things, like, I just find that to be ridiculous. But anyways,
and Damien, and I said this in the last podcast yesterday, that these YouTube videos are historical, because once we're long gone off this earth, there are going to be historians, kids graduating, going through every social media post, because they're going to have access to everybody's comments in X and all that stuff. And they're going to have access to all these YouTubes and these videos. And then they're going to go through them like they're historical documents. Not right now. We don't think about that. But in the future, when even MySpace and all those stuff, those will be historical documents for them. And they're going to go through it, and they're going to look for the references, and they're going to find the truth, and that's why we have this podcast. This podcast is basically finding the truth, because knowledge is power, man. That's why we always do that.
Power. I agree. That's why I try to give it to the regular people, because that's the ones, the non-elites is the ones that I hope to inspire.
Yes.
And so this picture right here, the art I made, is to explain the movement of pottery from China to Siberia, and then how I think, and this shows the DNA too of N1A female, and how N1A ends up in central Turkey, and it goes all the way to Europe, and is also in Kazakhstan, and I think moved by way of the migrations from Siberia and through Kazakhstan, both down into the Middle East and into Europe. And then I show also where Göbekli Tepe is, and then where the first pottery in central, which later these people have the same DNA that goes to Aliceahoic and a Çatalhöyük. And so there's a migration of ideas. And if you look at the house structures, you can see there's a similarity in how they're doing their house structures. They're not the only ones in the area doing this, but once again, that just shows that a lot of these are sharing ideas. And then I showed that Çatalhöyük, we know for a fact, with N1A female goes into Europe and is like the majority of Europe's introduction of N1A female with pottery. So all of these have N1A and all of them have pottery female, as we were talking about who does the pottery. And then here's another map that kind of shows that. And I show which ones went male DNA, which were that before was the female DNA, because I try to show both things so you can grasp they're still kind of doing the same thing and probably who they went with, because females in a sense or males are not always going by themselves. They're going as a group and taking, the ideas with them. And so this is the male one, and it shows the times and the areas they went, and it shows where they ended up, and that's almost the same place the pottery ends up. It both the ones that went with R1A took pottery from Siberia, and then R2A ends up that area makes pottery also, which is at 9,000 the pottery, which is the first in that area with the Jom or whatever it is, or can't remember now the name, but anyway, so yeah, Darmo pottery. See, these are the oldest potteries, and look at where it is in Iraq is almost near the Iranian border, and both these are on river systems. And so it just shows that this stuff, and this is why I've said that I think that it's very possible that these are influenced from Asia. So then this goes back to showing the Ubaid pottery and these other potteries in relation to each other. And also a lot of these have similarities as if they're interacting and trading. As you see, there's sometimes a little bit of overlap showing that they are in the similar shared regions. It's not like they're all untouched. Each one of them, in a sense, have references, which I think is important to grasp that, these, but once again, like I was saying about the first ones in Africa, they don't have anything to do with this. So, and then this right here to me shows the Mesopotamian influence area of religious thought. Now, at a certain point, ideas from the Yerk period definitely went into Egypt and North Africa.
See where it's located? The Ubaid. The Ubaid are located down in the Arabian or Syria, around Syria. And most of the wars, and look at that, most wars are happening in that area, correct?
Well, Ubaid is mainly Iraq with a little bit of Iran and a little bit of
Syria is off to the left. So
Syria is more with the Halfa.
Yeah,
that's more centering on Syria and a little bit of northern Iraq. Iraq is the red inside there. See the red? That's Iraq.
Wow. So dang.
And so then I show that the Sumerians are inside, but smaller version of the Ubaidians.
We're always sticking our nose over there, huh? Wow.
But so, and then the first cultures that become Egypt, I list both of them, and they're in the same area where the Yerk people show up. So influence. So it definitely even though Africa already had its own pottery, pottery does come in, and influence does come in from the Sumerian area, and it's probably almost 90% Sumerian or Yerk influence into Africa and not the other way until 5,000. 5,000, then ideas from basically Egypt start going back to the Middle East. But anyways, just to show you the general sphere of influence, these people are moving all around. All the regions inside this big red box I have on the outside all share religious ideas. So it also, just to give you an idea, that the influence of the thinking is spreading. That's why I feel like religion, just like the pottery, when people move, they take the pottery as a cultural idea with them and spread it. And the religion ideas are similar. And then this is showing the pottery, the areas that happened in Israel and Jordan And this right here helps to understand how they were, in a sense, three different branches, but still, this is not relating to Africa, this particular early pottery that happened there, because like I said, even though it's getting super close, it still is not yet the one that did that. Just so people understand. And this right here shows the pottery that all happening at different sites. And then once again, Africa's pottery is not really related, just to show you in reference that these all could be related, sort of, or loosely related, but it's certainly still at this point, Africa still is doing its own thing before it starts to later get stuff.
Right,
it's important to me to understand, like you said, I want to scientifically try to figure out what happened where. So this has to do with Africa pottery itself. And it shows like what times things got where, and then also shows like what the pottery looked like. And go ahead.
I was going to say, it's interesting because when I was reading that book about the Ubadians, it literally says in there the way they identify different cultures is by the pottery. That's how they identify the time frame. They can tell that's where they get the time frame. Basically, is identifying pottery. And I'm not sure if I read it from that book or if I was doing some research and somebody else said it, but they say that to the naked eye, basically anybody who's not knowledgeable on pottery, it wouldn't look any different. But there are people who can look at pottery and say, hey, this is from that time frame, because you can see the techniques they used for this. Like when you was talking about thin types of pottery and the shards and all that stuff like that. Like a lot of the pottery was like when Fat Jesus was saying earlier that they were destroying it. They didn't destroy it. A lot of times they didn't destroy it on purpose. Sometimes most of it was destroyed because they was recklessly digging it up and then they didn't know what they were doing. That's why we have so much red tape today with archaeology, because people would go out there, hear about a place, and they would go start digging it up, and they would destroy more than they could keep. And that's why I said earlier, China is more respectful in that manner. At least that from what they present online. If you go to their websites, you can hit the translation. It goes from their language to English, and it will tell you that they don't want to disturb the dead. They don't want to destroy what's already there, because those people buried those people with that, and they want to continue to hold up their standards as far as respecting their lifespan and their afterlife. And most people will just go there and not just with pitchforks and shovels and stuff. They will go there with all kinds. Dynamite, for instance. Not to go off subject, but you can find dynamite being used in the pyramids because they wanted to get behind a wall. So you can see how reckless we were just trying to get the dates and all this other stuff. So pottery, in a sense, is much easier to be destroyed. They might have thought that, hey, this was hard clay or something right here, and then they hit it, and then later on when they find out, oh, well, that was actually something cool to keep, and now it's destroyed.
Well, also, like the first stuff wasn't archaeology, it was like antiquarians, and then it was anthropology, and then a version of anthropology broke off and becomes archaeology. But anyways, so and then archaeology goes through like a couple different transitions too. But anyways, this is important. I'm trying to show here from two different regions of Africa. Like you said, Africa's large. This is all North Africa, and yet the potteries are not the same. So it still shows that there's even differentiation in African pottery, that it wasn't like only doing one thing distinctly. But still, it's important to understand what the facts are. And there is a lot of facts. And there is a relation to also later the spread of cattle, sheep, goats appear, at 8,000 years ago. And that is when, from that point, they get non-African pottery becomes part of North Africa. But only after that point. So before that is not the case. And some of the pottery comes from the pottery that relates to this pottery right here, the cardamom pottery, which we did a thing before where we talked about North Africa, and it says that this pottery shows up. Probably shows up from Spain, but it also could have came across the Sinai and North Africa. But for sure, some amount of it definitely came from Spain. But this shows that where it starts in the Middle East, shoots through Turkey to Greece, and then from there to Italy, and then from there over, in a sense, to France and then Spain. So, and then from there it goes into like Africa, which, like I said, is important to understand. This, and this right here shows that the N1A, which is we already talked about, we're doing females in pottery from the Middle East and, you know, central Turkey with Çatalhöyük, goes into the first populations that go into farmers that go into Europe. And it says U5 was the female DNA and not N1A. So that's how they know that it's farmer related. And those farmers were already showing signs of inequality, which they have. Some people have a little tiny house. Some people have bigger houses. Some people have house and a fence with their own little area. And then some people, as it shows down here, have 2 fences where other people don't. So there already was an inequality spreading too with this stuff. Then this right here is another one that shows how nDNA spreads and where the pottery moved. So you can kind of understand how this stuff relates to each other. Because I like to figure out, and that's pretty much my stuff, because my goal wasn't to talk about the Ubaidians per se, but how we get before that.
Yeah,
before what you had kind of talked about. Not
you for the people who just joined or joined in the middle of it. It was mostly me and Fat Jesus had a discussion. What I've learned from reading this book, and it was on the Ubaidians, and Damien actually hit me up and said, "Hey, I have a whole presentation for that." So that's how we got here. And this is how information is supposed to be spread. I never made an absolute. I just shared what I've read, and you gave me a piece of information that helped me. It was very interesting because, like I said, I read that book reread the book on the Doggone Tribe, and I didn't catch it before, or at least it didn't catch my attention before. But when you had talked about it, and I did the discussion about the Ubaidians, I learned that pottery was, in the sense, created by women. I mean, it literally was, because of the simple fact that everybody had their roles back then. Everybody had their specific roles, and the role for a woman at that time, it wasn't that they were to create pottery. It was that they were doing something for their household, for their family, and they wanted to speed up the process of hardening up this clay or mud or whatever the case may be. And that's how we got pottery from some civilizations. And this was by accident. This is how inventions happen by accident. You know, you're like, oh, I built this, I made this mud plate, but I needed to dry up real quick because I need to use it. My son or my husband or my wife or whoever the case may be broke it, and you got pissed off about it, and you was like, hey, well, I need some more real quick because dinner's coming up, so let me heat this up real quick. And now they got different things. And I have to harp on how dedicated you are to get into the origins of things. I mean, I've had 6 discussions with you now, 5 or 6 discussions with you, and we've had a couple with Fat Jesus jumped in later on in it, and you present your information to the point to where you want people to say, if somebody has a question, it's almost like you read all these questions and you said, hey, I'm gonna go find the answers for them. And that's what I basically did. People had a lot of questions, or they'll say something and I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. Let me go look into this. And yes, ChatGPT and Grok helps me out because that's where most people are going to start. Just like with any search engine, you got a question, you go to Google or whatever search link that you'll use, and you'll ask it a question, and you'll get you an answer. But what I try to do is I say, well, give me a peer-reviewed article, give me an academic book on it, give me something that, something to research on it, so that way I can read more into it, because a quick 2-3 minute read is not going to give you the information. It's not going to give you the context that you needed for this information. And that's where I feel like people who do their research, such as yourself, you give us the context with visualization. A lot of people aren't learners from mouth to ear type thing. A lot of people are learners from visual aids, so they'll see something and they'll visually remember it. Like when I said around 12,000 BC for Göbekli Tepe, or 12,000 years ago, I'm sorry, I say that because of the simple fact that that's an easy number for me to remember. But I know that it's around that time frame, which is anywhere from 11,000 to, some people even said 18,000, but 12,000 is my happy medium, because that's what I can get in a sense of, okay, that's the roundabout. And not every date that we are given is a precise date. It's a date that's given to us because of so many different reasons. I actually did a article on my website. I'm gonna bring this up real quick because I think this is pretty interesting, on how one of the things we didn't talk about was how do we date this stuff, right? And I actually did an article just July 6th, actually, and it's on my website. It's called Dating Methods in Archaeology, Relative versus Absolute. And I explain it, how did they date certain things from, pottery, stone. Even there's ways of dating stone. A lot of people don't know that, but there is ways of dating stone. Not the stone itself, but the components, like the material that's attached to the stone, like I don't know, like organic matter, for instance, right? I talk about radiocarbon, potassium, argon, uranium series dating. There's so many different ways that we do this stuff, and it's on my website. And I want people to understand that these dates aren't okay. Now stop loading again. I don't know what's going on. But it gives us the dates for understanding how these civilizations and cultures started. Like I said earlier, the idea of how they identify cultures was not mainly, but some of it was through pottery. And that's where we get ideas. Matter of fact, our like I said earlier, mythologies, most of our mythology started off with a depiction of some type of god, or whatever you want to call it, that's on pottery, and that gives an indication of the history of those people and their religion and their ideas at that time. And it's not always religion. It's just in the Western world, that's what we would call, as far as religion, what they worshipped and so on and so forth, when you talked about the sun wheel and all that other stuff. So yeah, I really do appreciate you coming in and doing this, bro.
I really appreciate you having the chance.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, definitely. You're always on it. There's history, and then there's bullshit.
Yeah.
And I feel like 98% of what people say is bullshit, or they're trying to jump on the bandwagon. I've seen so many times where, somebody will post something, and then somebody with millions of followers would get like thousands and thousands and thousands of views. And then the person who actually posted is some small account with maybe 100-200 followers. And the person don't give that person credit at all. It's like, why don't you? And then on top of that, if I had the funds to sponsor people, I would definitely sponsor people who I feel like is passionate. Too many people want that monetary gain and that fame to be like, I told you so, or I knew this and I do that. And I'm just like, yo, there's about 20-30 books that tells you that people have been doing this for years now, and you just jumped on the bandwagon. And I think I
noticed some agencies that they join, that they connect with, so that they do all the hard work and footwork for them, because there are famous agencies out of California that these podcasters and streamers connect with. And I think the agencies have strict rules not to reference other people that they put onto their stream. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's payment or something like that.
I can tell you from personal, because I pay attention to what people post. I know there are people out there who have been fired, let go, and they're contracted voided because they did something that went against their sponsor. And that's one thing that's a very
Yep.
sticky situation, is that most people who get sponsors, they have to stay in line with their sponsors' ideas. And most people who are doing this for monetary or
Or
fame,
you end up like Yee.
or sometimes in the real world, money,
Adidas.
they don't even care about the money.
His is mental illness, I think. I mean, that, yeah.
Yeah, I don't even talk about him because his is a whole situation. But the idea of academia and these people is that, like I said, Dr. Keith Chang, when he was trying to find the cure, when he's trying to find a cure for skin cancer, he doesn't get the sponsorship and the help that he needs to, so he does it himself. Now, if people will combine their sources to help him out, it's just not on a university level, but just on the cancer societies and all this stuff. If they provided the help, which I don't know if they do or not, if they were to, from around the world, there's no telling how much information we would be able to get to solve this issue. And with pottery, it gets really interesting because a lot of people will say, well, these people were, they're primitive because this, that, and third, but we still take stuff to this day and put it in kilns and make our own types of pottery. I mean, pottery is never going anywhere. That's easy. One of the best ways to create so much different art. Now they paint pottery, clay, mud bricks, and all this other stuff, artifacts. They paint them so it doesn't look like brown clay and stuff like that. They paint it where certain types of paint to make it more aesthetically pleasing to the eye. But that's only because of the simple fact of our idea of what a beauty is. Every beauty is subjective. So,
But I think in general, humans love flourish and would put art everywhere. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
We there's never not going to be art. There always has been some form of art in a sense. Even like I was saying, that even 60,000 years ago, people making the shells and did it in an artistic way. There literally has just been most of human history is just as art and more art.
Yep.
Now I agree, some of them were religious or not. Some are just cultural. But we also just love art. We'll put like I said about those bowls having rims, adding a little rim on it is just flourish and art. It doesn't have any like use. It's just to make it look nice.
Yeah,
and we absolutely love that shit.
I make some art too. There's my logo right there. I put it right here all the time. I got all this background stuff that's art. Because it fills up the background and looks good. It makes my viewers comfortable. It makes you guys comfortable. It makes me comfortable that I'm surrounded. Instead of having white walls, it looks like I'm freaking crazy or something with just pure, clean white walls. It's like, where the hell are you? In a hotel? So it's like, I love design. I love art. I love the idea of clay pottery. It just tells a story. And that's what people are trying to do. They're trying to communicate a story about themselves. They want to pass on the next generation who they were, why they were here, and what they did, what their specialization was, and who they're passing it on to. That's special. That's important to them. And that's what these clay potteries really mean.
So speaking of art, I just shared a thing of Neanderthal art on or stones that were chosen or modified to look like human faces. And they're old.
Right.
Yeah, people have pre-human already were.
Well, it looks like the hills have eyes. Jesus, that's scary shit right there. Is that to scare off the people or?
No, I call them ancestors.
I'm gonna be honest with you. The one in the middle looks like a troll when trolls existed under bridges and stuff.
But my point is, so art is a very universal thing. I mean, it's not like something that people had to wait for humans in higher culture to do. Art is like ingrained in the more developing mind. It's not. Here's like another thing that shows that too. This shows animism portable art, and they're already making sort of humanoid looking figurines, at 300,000 and maybe even 500,000 years ago. We're choosing rocks that look like faces. It's
Can you show the troll looking rock again?
Oh, I have to add it again. I took it off.
Oh, damn, that was so good. I like that one. Y- Yeah, that was so interesting. And you probably lost it already. It's not there
Oh,
anymore.
I have to. I have like 400 pieces of art that I
When
have
you
to
do me
complete.
when you give me a chance, please send that to me because I really
Sure.
am interested in that photo. So
It's part of one of my blogs I made. There you go. You could add it. Yeah.
oh, there it is. Yeah. Hold on. I love that. Yep,
Right. And
got it.
cool.
All
So
right.
the point I'm just saying is just to show that art is really even more than and I do think those could have a semi-religious, or in a sense, or pre-religious sort of nature. I say that they could be ancestor stones. I don't know, but they certainly the desire to do art is absolutely old, and I think that here's the one for I was talking about the ostrich shells that are 60,000 in Africa before totemism emerges.
You know what? I'm gonna use that I actually screenshot that thing that you showed up.
All right.
I'm gonna tell people that you thought you invented trolling. I thousands and thousands of years ago, they
Right.
have
300,000 years, I
yeah,
think
yeah.
it is.
You can't claim it. You can't claim it. You can't put the registered trademark or anything like that because Neanderthals have the registered trademark on trolling. So all
Yeah.
those pictures online, you
Go ahead
can't
and
claim
share,
it.
Tyrone. Go ahead and share the picture I did. There you go. For the one in Africa where they started putting individualistic, like probably family groups or
Mhm.
pre-totemistic, you know, you would put different scratches on your. So why they would do this, just so people understand. Even like way later, we know that they took ostrich shells. They would make a hole. They would probably eat the egg, like dump it out, and then they would fill it with water, and it was like a canteen. They could carry this around, and they
Mhm.
would also bury several of them in the
Like an
ground or
ostrich
whatever.
egg, you said?
Yeah, ostrich egg. They would bury several ostrich eggs in the ground, like during the rainy season, so that later in the drier season they had like backup water. They could just pull out an ostrich egg, pop the wax or whatever, clay or something, who knows, reeds stuck in the hole, whatever stuck in the hole, take that out and then drink the water. And it's believed that they were putting these personal engraved things so that you could tell whose ostrich eggs those were.
Wow.
And
It
so that's
was
what I was just saying, that
information.
even
Yeah.
though I do think that totemism emerged more fully in Europe as they first left Africa, it's not impossible those ideas were, in a sense, already germinating in Africa.
That's crazy. Can you imagine you're one of the later families and you're making a line? It says that looks like John Doe over there. You need to make a line across like that to signify that's your egg. The
Well, yeah,
complications later on down. There's so many lines that this is the youth making them. But the first one was probably one strike. This is mine, and then the next one was two strikes, and then all of a sudden these are like how many strikes on there? So that's like further on down the family line.
yeah. Like I said, I don't know, and I don't claim to know. All
Yeah, I
I can
mean,
say is, right. I can just say is it is logical to start seeing the developing complexity in Africa before people ever left.
that
Just
that'd be
and
cool.
like I
That
said,
can
I feel like
become.
people don't acknowledge that enough.
Yeah,
That
this can become a cultural phenomenon too. So when if it starts with one person within the culture, then it just continuously because they keep doing it.
absolutely,
This is very significant. Everybody, you might think this
absolutely,
is nothing, but this is very significant because it started with one person, and we always talk about the bandwagon syndrome. This is like the bandwagon syndrome. Everyone jumps on board, and this continues on to culture, to culture, to culture, culture, and
I
it lasts
agree.
forever. And here we're looking at a lot of lines meaning like it lasted for a very long time.
It's so funny you brought up this, and we're getting up to 2 hours, so that's good. But
Yeah,
I want to bring up that it was no, bring that back up. It's interesting you brought that back. You had that up because of the simple fact that those are ostrich eggs. Now
correct.
there is this the um, lumbango bones. I can't remember if that's
Yeah.
exactly what, you know what I'm talking about.
Well,
I think
I can bring up that also because I
yeah,
have a
yeah,
thing of the different bones.
yeah. So those sketches on those ostrich eggs almost mimic those lumbango bones.
Here's some bones.
Yeah, those right there. Yeah,
But
those.
actually, the bones start for sure in Africa even older, and I
Yeah,
have a thing of that also.
yeah, they have some that's older than that. Yeah, and that's actually some people believe from the historical side, the science side, is that is an indication of the women's menstrual cycle. Because
Correct.
they were able to line up with the moon and stuff like that, and they were able. That's how our calendars come to be. That's why me personally, I always say women were the first mathematicians because of the simple fact of their menstrual lining up with the moon. And if you look at agricultural history, the moon started off first, and then later the sun became prominent. It used
And
to
I
be the
also
moon,
think
and
it can
then
relate to the Milky Way
yeah, yep,
because the Milky Way is the pathway to the souls.
mhm,
And when you can see the Milky Way the best is when the moon dies.
yep,
The new moon, when it's all black, sorry, before the moon starts coming back and being reborn,
mhm,
that's the one time that the Milky Way and also the time of the ancestors and stuff. And I show that the oldest of these type of scratch lines and whatever,
mhm,
78,000, 73, 74, are all in Africa, way
yep,
before those other bone things. But
yep.
yeah,
And that's why I say that a lot of people don't know this type of history. That they'll see something somewhere else and they'll say, "Oh, that's pretty new," and I'm like, "Yo, you can find that right in Africa." I've
yeah.
actually did that with somebody. Somebody had posted something, and I said, "Oh, you can find that in Africa." And I explained to them, "Hey," and it was a female too. And I explained to them, I said, "That's why I say women are the first mathematicians because of the simple fact that that's where it relates to." And they were like, "Oh, I never knew that before." And it's because people don't know this because they don't care to. Well, I'm not gonna say they don't care. It's an ego idea where they don't want to see that something in Africa is older, and then they'll go on to say, "Well, it's very primitive." Well, before we started building cars, we was riding animals. So I mean, look where we came from, and then even today we still ride animals like horses and camels and all this other stuff. So our old
And
mentality never.
reindeer. I think actually
Yeah.
we might have rode reindeer before we
And
rode
that,
horses.
you know what? We need to talk
Siberian.
about that when Christmas comes around because that's actually a historical thing to talk about. So yeah, I agree with you 100%, bro. You're fascinating with your history, man. It's Lambambo, yeah, Lambambo bone.
Yeah.
That's what Fat Jesus put up there. It's very very interesting, and
That's 43,000 to 44,000 years ago. Is that
Which
that
is
that.
younger than the 78,000 years in Africa,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
which I don't hear most people even referring to. And I'm like, yeah, it's a lot older.
The only reason why I say Lumbambo bones is because that's where even in the even the idea of this Lumbambo bone goes back this far is the idea that we can find this stuff everywhere though, right? The sketches, the depictions, and all this stuff, and that's just an agreed timeline. That's not an actual um, saying
But then
that.
also speaking of Africa, go to the other picture I have there. That one is showing a whole bunch of stuff like in together, showing how Southern Africa had a lot of things going on.
Yeah, that's
But
why when people say sub-Sahara Africa, I'm just like, man, y'all. I was like, I can tell when somebody's on the big
you guys
Africa.
can call it the hashtag lines.
yeah,
So yeah, I mean, for modern society, you guys can call it the hashtag lines because these are just lines inside bones and stuff like that, and they look like our hashtags of today that we use when we're texting.
Yeah, hashtags got to do with numbers. So that's a
and
good
see where it says
correlation.
L1 200,000
Yeah.
years ago, most of humanity was down in that area near the Kalahari Desert.
Yeah,
Which
and
it wasn't a desert then at that time. It was green savanna. Or
just like the Sahara Desert wasn't
correct.
desert. It was always it was all forestry and all that other stuff.
Isn't it wild that the abacus is also like lines too? They have lines and rows. and they have it's perfect though. It's not like drawn, but the abacus, being a mathematical system, has the beads in it, and they use the beads to count, and each bead is like a line itself. So they count the system. It's an automated system, hand automated system compared to a drawing system of counting. So that could be even something that we need to look into, is that maybe it was a way for them to count.
Right. True that. So
and here's a picture. Speaking of, you were talking about writing stuff. This shows Siberia and moose and elk, and they were already catching them. And there's later they were riding them for sure and using them to pull sleds. But also those are moose and stuff even that were done. But also there's even today, there's still people in Siberia that ride elk and reindeer.
Yeah, the hell with that. Yeah, nope, that's not even on my bucket list. I seen the videos. No, I don't think you'll ever see a black person riding an elk. No Hispanic or black person is going to be riding that. Jesus Christ.
Well, the first cowboys were Hispanics. The first cowboys were Hispanics and black slaves and black free people. So, and then it was later white people.
More likely, you'll see us riding an elephant more so than an elk. I mean, I think elephants are a little bit, they're like gentle giants in a way. But, elks, oh my gosh, they're so unpredictable. So,
well, it depends on how they're trained. I mean, it's like any animal. You can have a tiger and, can be a companion animal. I mean, it just depends on how you raise them.
That's true, because I've seen the videos where people have raised baby deers. And the baby deers would grow up with the dogs. Have you guys seen those TikTok videos and stuff? And they're not AI. They're actually deers that the mothers either passed away or something, and then they left behind. And so the people living out there in the middle of the wilderness, they raise the baby deers, and it's basically become part of the family.
Right.
But yeah.
So, well, I guess that's the end of the show. I really appreciate it, man. You wonderful job like always.
I'm still not going to ride a moose.
We got another. We'll do another one in 2 weeks. Of course.
I look like
I actually want to give you guys a presentation on the Anunnaki and see what you guys know on it. I actually have a PowerPoint presentation on it, so maybe we could do that. So I'll end the stream. And then we'll have our side talk, and then we'll go from there. Anything else you guys want to say?
That's it. Well, I just want to say that I don't agree that people that are African American or black could never ride stuff. I mean, you said that maybe, I would say that's like saying that black people can't swim. Just because they're not given an opportunity to swim in one area doesn't mean, like the first surfers, everyone thinks of Hawaii, but actually, I top of my head, I can't remember. It's either South Africa or West Africa are the first surfers. There's drawing evidence of it. So I think that culturally we're put into boxes and we think how we're taught. But the truth is I don't buy that. That's all
depictions do play a big part of it, and that's why it's important to go to the pictures, because pictures were actually the first actually indicating of writing down or keeping records or annotations of what was going on around us.
Yeah. Well, like I said, and just so people know, I don't try to use my knowledge against people as some kind of attack. I believe in calling people in instead of like calling them out.
Yeah.
And so, I have a heart of an educator. So my goal is not to be one up anybody or be better. I'm welcome for someone to challenge and show me a truth that I'm in error at as quickly as I'm willing to do to other people. I'm just saying, because some people are not. Some people they'll never admit to wrong, and that's not me. And I also some people love debunking people and showing them how they know more. I know a fuck ton. But I don't generally go around trying to use knowledge as a weapon. I want to use it as like a tool to educate.
Sharp tongue.
To give people,
using the word.
Yeah, so that the people can become empowered.
Yeah.
That's my goal. I think this is the one.
Praise the Lord. Hallelujah.
Power to
Hey,
I
you
think
need
this
to-
one is one
you
that
need to
has
give those
the
nations right
person
now.
surfing.
You're going to be taken down. Oh,
Yeah, right there. See right there in the corner of the Southwest Africa, there's a
Mm.
person surfing, and it's
Mm.
older than Hawaii.
Mm. Oh yeah, I see it. Yeah, right there.
Yeah, and it's Africans. So I'm just making a comment that I know that people nowadays have, like, ethnocentric views and limited cultural things, but it's not accurate to like who people are.
Mm.
We're not like I know we're like we all are Americans, but that's how we've culturally been forced to think. I'm a human, part of the humanity. And everyone's part of my humanity. I remember when I lived in Southern California, I would go down into Mexico and volunteer at orphanage. And this one guy said to me, "Man, why don't you go down to Mexico? You could help people in America." And I said, "I don't know. They're only like 30 miles away from me, and they're in deep need. How could you tell me I'm wrong for going to an orphanage and helping children? The fact that you think they don't matter, but someone 4,000 or 3,000 miles away in New York is like matters the most to me, or I should see them as in the most need." I just,
People,
it's like the homeless people in Miami. I always rode my bike through there. Everybody else drives and they don't see them. They ignore them. But I always ride my bike through there. I help out with the church inside the city. They're not there anymore, the church, because the big company bought the church and everything. But the thing is that, you know what they did with all those homeless people? They shipped them out. I don't know where they ended up or went anywhere, but they just treat them like they're savages, and they used to be people that work, that pay taxes and all that, because the cost of living in Miami is astronomical right
right. And most anarchists don't call it homeless people. We call it unhoused people as a societal's ill, not the person's responsible failure.
Yeah. The other word that I hate the most is needy. The needy. I hate that word. When people go around and say the needy, I'm like, you can't use a better word than that.
Classify them. They classify them, and they do that on purpose because they want to bring sympathy within the culture of that city. Say, oh, they need help. Come join us. Let's donate money and a cause. This is a problem for everybody. Maybe it's not a problem.
I wish they said that. I think that it's actually kind of not. They say the needy they're the takers. They're the ones that are leeching off of us.
Yeah.
I wish people had the attitude that we should be caring for others. To me, that's the healthy. That would be the civilized.
That's what we do with our grandmother and grandpa. That's what we do with our family that is retired and done. How could we think like that on other human beings?
I agree.
We have our own family members. And some people just throw away their family members in old folks' homes because they just don't want to deal with them anymore, because they're too busy with work and too busy with their lives, And that mentality, that cultural mentality is why we have such low numbers in birth these days. It's affecting us altogether. It's like a disease, and it comes back around. Yeah, the selfishness is a disease. It comes right back around. It's deep rooted, and we need to stop that. We need to adopt the Italian culture, the Spanish culture. They take their families home. They take care of their mothers, their grandmothers, and everybody at home, which is amazing. I find that so freaking them, and they're always walking. There's like 90-year-old grandmother still huffing and puffing, just going fast, going back and forth, cooking and everything, enjoying life because she's taking care of the family.
I think it's good to take care of our own culture, but I personally, as an anarchist, don't see cultures. I see humanity. I wish that we would have that attitude for everybody. There should be no place in the earth where a child is hungry. None. Zero to me.
Mm-hmm.
And we should care about it because this is our fellow humans. It's just like here's the another piece of art that relates to that. Can you share it?
Yep, bringing it up now.
Yeah, we are one human family. The Genome Project confirms the genetics of 3 billion humans are 99.9% identical to every person on the average, only 0.1 different genetically from every person on the planet.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep.
So I feel like that we have to think. I do agree we should care about elderly like other cultures that do. But to me, I want us to think way past that. We're all the same. We're all one people. This separation of borders and cultures is just it's an abstraction. It's not the reality to me. Anyways, I appreciate you telling me, man. I'm gonna tell you how I see it.
He'll be back.
People either like me or don't. I don't say what I say so people like me or not. I just say what I feel is true, and you know, and I also, as you know, have evidence to support why I think it's true.
Right.
You're like a professor, Mr. Adhope. I'm going to call you Professor Adhope because you teach me so much about history and life and everything, and you're drawing up all this stuff. I mean, I'm surprised you don't have textbooks, man, because he's
got a book coming out.
He's got a book coming out, but I haven't made that my goal because my goal has never been about trying to get money. But I do agree. I am going to work my book, and I have been getting my quotes and my stuff because I want to help humanity, and I have worked for years and done tons and tons of art and research and stuff trying to better humanity. My goal is to better humanity first and then worry about other stuff. And so that's why, you know, I don't say things that are, you know, that other people would feel are politically correct because I'm sick of being correct in that sense where we don't offend people that have offensive ideas. I personally don't care if I offend people with offensive ideas.
Well, right now we're offending people in another country because we're Americans as we speak. So they have a cultural biasness towards Americans. So when this goes out internationally on YouTube, then people from that country are going to be like, oh, let's give it a copyright strike or something like that because they're biased against the Western culture. So people will always be biased in some way. They will find something to be negative about because they hate something about another culture or another other people. They'll find something, dude. So I mean, don't fight it. Just be positive and active and share your thoughts. And in the future, a historian will pick it up and they will decide whether it is the right thing or the wrong thing. Because all we can do is research and provide the information that we need to provide, so that we can give them the truth, the future generations, the truth.
Yeah. I agree. Well, I appreciate coming on and sharing stuff with you guys.
All right, yes, man. Sir. I appreciate it, bro. Like I always say,
Damien Marie Adhope, everybody. Please check him out. Go to his website if you need his website. Check out him in X. He is an educator. He is the man. I mean, I will call him Professor Adhope because I have learned so much from him from every podcast we've been on. In fact, man, I mean, dude, he can. Oh wow, he can go to a university and teach everybody. So the man, this guy is it, man. He's the real deal. So go check him out.
Right on. Knowledge is power.
Got a little hype now. Can I let it die down? I remember days in the trench. Time to go hard in. Time to go all in. Time to get my all to this shit. Panamera maxed out. First class flights out Atlantic to Pacific. Yeah, it's lit.
All right.